Spellbinder 1988. Spellbinder is a 1988 American horror film about witchcraft, directed by Janet Greek and starring Timothy Daly and Kelly Preston. Plot. The film opens with a group of friends playing basketball. Afterward, they say their goodbyes, and Jeff and Derek head off to their cars. There, they see Miranda Reed arguing with her boyfriend, who punches her, knocking her to the ground. The two men rush to her aid, acting like the gentlemen they claim to be, and defend Miranda. However, the boyfriend becomes violent with them, telling them to mind their own business. He pulls out a knife and cuts Derek's hand. Jeff manages to fight him off, and the boyfriend leaves, but not before telling Jeff he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. Jeff offers to drive Miranda, Derek agrees, and they say their goodbyes. Once in the car, Jeff asks her where she lives. Miranda shows no intention of giving an address and only says that she had just lost her house a few minutes earlier. Jeff is annoyed at the shock of learning that a young and beautiful woman lives with a jerk like him, then offers to drive her home. When they arrive at Jeff's house, he introduces her to his pets, a cat and a dog. Miranda tells him they're annoyed because he's always late. Jeff just laughs at how ridiculous it sounds that she could understand animals. Then Jeff complains of back pain, and Miranda offers to cure it. She takes him to the bed, has him undress, and lie face down. Miranda climbs onto his back and straddles him, reciting some words and running her hands down his back until she finds the source of the pain. She stops there, and finally, Jeff arches his back, effectively removing the pain. Jeff gets up and tells her it doesn't hurt anymore. Then Miranda collapses, exhausted, and falls asleep. The next day, Jeff told his friends everything, but they only asked if there had been sex. Jeff didn't answer, but they assumed there hadn't been, which they criticized him for, saying it was a big mistake. But everything was different that night when he got home. Jeff didn't miss the opportunity and enjoyed Miranda's body, that young and sensual body, with those lingerie Miranda wore that made a man shudder just thinking about putting his hands on it and squeezing it tightly against Miranda's skin. That's what Jeff did while Miranda straddled him, kissing him, and Jeff squeezed her buttocks, a steamy scene with passionate kisses that showed their mutual desire to explore each other's bodies. The relationship seems to have a good future, and despite things moving very fast, Jeff proposes a party to introduce the future owner of his paychecks. Everyone likes Miranda, she does fortune-telling for Jeff's friends. While Jeff's secretary, Grace, watches her intently, Miranda talks about the winter solstice, referring to it as the sacred night when darkness is greatest than day. Miranda goes to the kitchen and takes a turkey off the stove with her bare hands, then plunges them into a bucket of ice while reciting a prayer. She dries her hands, and they're unburned, but she doesn't notice Grace watching her. They exchange a few words, and Miranda realizes Grace doesn't like her, so she's direct and asks what she's after. Grace returns the question and says goodbye with the phrase, "Be careful not to get burned." Jeff asks Grace for her opinion in the office. Grace hesitates, but Jeff persists, telling her that her opinion is very important. Grace agrees to give her opinion and tells him that she is weird and troublesome. Jeff doesn't like that, and Grace tells him that there's no doubt that love is blind. A woman arrives at Jeff's office. He greets her and says he doesn't know why she's there. She introduces herself as Mrs. White and asks him to send her back. After saying this, Mrs. White leaves, declaring it's the first and last warning. Jeff immediately calls Miranda, who panics, saying, "They found us," and hangs up. When Jeff gets home, she's gone, she's left him. In his desperation over being abandoned, Jeff goes to the police, even though he knows it's absurd to ask them to find someone who left him. At the station, Jeff shows the officer a picture of his runaway girlfriend, and the officer simply says they don't look for people's girlfriends. But when he sees the picture, he tells Jeff he doesn't know what he's getting himself into and sends him to a lieutenant. Lieutenant Lee asks Jeff to explain his presence, to which Jeff replies that he should explain it himself, since he was sent there by a police officer without knowing what it's about. He then shows the photo, and the lieutenant tells him he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. The lieutenant explains that the necklace Miranda is wearing in the photo is the symbol of a satanic cult that has committed many crimes but has become very powerful, and he advises Jeff to stay away from them. But Jeff no longer controls his decisions, Miranda controls him completely. You could say he's in love, so he continues searching for her. On a rainy night, Miranda finally reappears and reveals that she belongs to the cult, a coven of witches led by her ex-boyfriend Aldous, and that her mother was responsible for her induction into the cult. At first, she felt cool in the coven, but seeing the things they did made her realize how wrong it all was. She shows Jeff her old house where the rituals took place. Miranda says she wants to leave the cult and explains that the mysterious events Jeff has witnessed are part of the coven's effort to bring her back into the fold. The coven's solstice ritual includes a human sacrifice on a beach where the victim must come willingly, which Miranda believes is her. When Jeff encourages her to go to the police, Miranda refuses, saying the coven will pursue her anyway and she doesn't think the police would believe her. In any case, if the coven hasn't brought her back by the winter solstice, which is the next day, Miranda will be free forever. That night was difficult. The cult attacked them in their home. People dressed in black peered through the window as Jeff, terrified, couldn't face them alone and couldn't call the police. The witches and warlocks seemed to bend reality, and Jeff could see the windows bending as if they were flexible but not breaking. But finally, the windows gave way and shattered, and they tried to force open the door, reaching through it with a hand. Miranda created a protective circle, and only then were they able to escape safely that night. Based on all of this, Jeff agreed to help Miranda escape the coven for 24 hours instead of going to the police. He went to Derek first, who was furious because they had a very important case and had to be in court in a few hours. Derek told Jeff he had warned him not to get too involved with Miranda and that he shouldn't yet. But in the end, Jeff agreed to help and drove them to a safe place. He hides her with his client Brock, who lives in a fortress he built himself while he goes to work. But at his office, he's visited again by Ms. White, and Jeff agrees to see her, which is a mistake. MS. White tells him that they are everywhere, that they know his every move, and that they also have contacts in Jeff's hometown. She even went to his mother's grave and exhumed her, now she has her bones, which she uses to perform certain rituals. Jeff becomes enraged, but Ms. White starts destroying the office and scratching his face. They leave the office, and Jeff threatens everyone there. They try to stop him, but he's out of control. Ms. White calls for help. An associate from the office tells him they have an important meeting and he can't miss it, but Jeff is like a man possessed. He doesn't listen and leaves, ignoring everyone. He gets in his car and goes to find Miranda. Upon arriving at the fortress, he finds it destroyed, and upon seeing Brock, he asks about Miranda, but Brock no longer responds. Jeff breaks into Miranda's old house and forces the current occupants, members of the cult, to reveal Miranda's location, Towers Beach. Jeff and Derek rush to the beach to save Miranda. Derek claims to have called Lieutenant Lee, who has sent the local police to assist them, and goes to find them, while Jeff stealthily makes his way to the beach, where the cult is holding its ceremony, to rescue Miranda. While Miranda lies restrained on the sand, Aldous performs the ritual for the sacrifice, surrounded by many people dressed in black robes. Unfortunately, Jeff is discovered and captured. Aldous stabs Miranda as Jeff screams, but unexpectedly, he releases her instead of killing her. Miranda gets up with a smile and confuses Jeff by dancing seductively around him, instead of running away or helping him. Before he can regain his senses, Jeff is gagged and forcibly bound. Miranda is then dressed in a robe and joins the coven in their ritual. Derek arrives at that moment with two police officers who respectfully remove their caps and join the ritual. It's now clear that Miranda was involved in the plot all along and was only there as bait. Jeff is the true sacrifice, and Derek is the leader of the coven, with Miranda as his accomplice in trapping Jeff and forcing him to willingly participate in the sacrifice, as the ritual demands. Miranda tells a heartbroken Jeff that she knew he would come for her and kisses him mischievously, gagged and bound, before slowly pulling away, demonstrating that she never loved him and that he never had a chance with her. Jeff now understands the magnitude of the plot and his betrayal, but it's too late. Derek makes one last sarcastic remark: if Derek wouldn't take care of Jeff, no one else would, and plunges the dagger into his chest, tearing out his heart. The film ends with Grace's funeral. She died under mysterious circumstances after an accident. At the funeral, Lieutenant Lee questions Derek about Jeff, and Derek says he has no idea and that the last he heard was Jeff had gone to Mexico with Miranda. Lieutenant Lee also mentions Grace, saying she had told him other things that contradict her version of events, but Derek only replies that Grace had a drinking problem and that they'll surely find out when they do the autopsy, and that Jeff will return at any moment since he does that all the time. Lieutenant Lee isn't entirely convinced by Derek's story, but he has nothing against him. The final scene shows Miranda and Derek repeating the same scenario from the beginning of the film with a new victim, Derek's new law client. As Derek leaves his office with his client, outside Miranda is performing the same damsel in distress act, being beaten by an abusive boyfriend. He immediately rushes to her aid. Derek merely accompanies her, without taking the lead, and thus the new client is captivated when Miranda looks at him with those eyes of a damsel grateful and rescued by a handsome gentleman. Comments. Miranda is John Travolta's future wife, but here we see her in her prime, with her sensuality at its peak. The film opens with a scene that could make it predictable. Many of us might have guessed that the fight scene between Miranda and her boyfriend was just a staged scene. This is confirmed by Miranda's inaction, as she simply waits for Jeff to act, whether he defends her, takes her away, or says nothing in the car, just waiting to see how far Jeff will go. So, let this serve as a lesson for any of us. Even if it seems like we should intervene in a couple's fight, it's a common mistake to do so when it happens in public. If a girl is hesitant and won't tell you where she lives, she's probably up to something because she's sizing you up, among other things. It's also curious that a guy who's all mine, like Derek, doesn't rush to take the initiative and lets you do it. Either he's in on it or he knows perfectly well that it's a trick. Otherwise he wouldn't let you take the initiative. To clarify, this didn't seem predictable to me from the beginning, it's just curious. Apparently, Grace was the only one with any sense. She understood perfectly well that Miranda was looking for something in Jeff, and it wasn't love. While everyone was dazzled by Miranda's beauty, his friends praising Jeff's manly ego, the women perhaps envying her looks, and Jeff completely infatuated with the pleasures Miranda offered him. He failed to see that behind that feminine charm lay his fatal destiny. Even the police warned him, and if someone you don't know gives you a warning, you should at least consider it instead of ignoring it. They gain nothing by telling you to be careful, it's your life, after all. Besides, if they're saying it, it's because they know more than you do. Finally, Mexico is chosen as the fugitive's destination, a common trope in 90s productions, which is just curious. That's all from me. I look forward to your comments, and if you saw this movie in your teens, let me know. Goodbye.